Everyone thought he was the perfect husband, the devoted father. But only I knew what he said at home and the things he did that left me cold to the bone. He thought he had it all under control. Thought he could paint me as the unstable, unfit mother, the crazy woman in the house. But the moment my daughter stepped onto that witness stand and spoke one sentence of truth, that smug, confident smile on his face shattered in an instant. That afternoon, I sat quietly in the corner of a friend's gathering, listening to their laughter echo across the room, while the air around me felt heavy, almost suffocating. "Claire, did Gordon get promoted?" Jennifer beamed, holding out her phone toward me. "I saw his post those beach pictures. You guys looked so happy." On the screen, we were all smiles. The sunset cast a soft glow over my shoulder. Gordon's arm was draped around me, and Emily nestled between us like a picture-perfect family. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. His company gave him a new project, sort of a reward, I guess. So we went to the beach to celebrate. That photo was one Gordon had carefully selected. He chose the lighting at dusk, edited the colors, smoothed the exhaustion off my face. In the frame, we looked like the perfect couple, with a sweet, smiling daughter to complete the image. The comments rolled in. Dream family. Gordon's the perfect husband. Goals. What they didn't know was that 10 minutes after that picture was taken, Gordon left. Said a client had an urgent call. Just like that, Emily and I stayed behind. We ended up eating pizza from a corner store, then catching a cab home alone. "Why didn't Daddy stay to watch the stars with us?" she asked softly. "He's busy," I murmured, but I knew better. He wasn't really busy, just didn't want to be there. For the past few years, every night after he came home, he drifted in like a breeze, straight into his study, locked the door, and didn't come out until late. Sometimes he reeked of alcohol. I cooked dinner alone, helped Emily with homework alone, ironed clothes, took out the trash, signed for packages alone. Occasionally, he'd come out to grab a beer. He'd glance at me in the kitchen, eyes dull, then walk away without a word. Whenever I tried to share something, "Emily got praised at school today," or "Mrs. Smith next door invited us over this weekend," he'd respond with a flat, "Oh." There were no fights she couldn't even be bothered to argue. I'd talk, he'd ignore. I'd ask a question, he'd toss out a yeah or sure, like a reflex. You want to know what emotional neglect looks like? It's smashing a plate in the kitchen and watching your husband not even glance up. Yet out in public, he was a different man. He'd wrap his arm around me for photos. He'd brag about my cooking. "Claire makes the best curry in town." He'd smile and say, "My wife's amazing. She's the glue that keeps our family together." I'd nod and smile, chin tilted like I was grateful. But my jaw would tremble from how hard I was clenching it. Emily was the one who noticed the most. She's young, but she feels things deeply. Every time Gordon walked in the door, she'd sit up straighter, quietly put her toys away, speak in a whisper. She'd learned to tuck her feelings into the corners of her clothes, hoping to please a father who never truly saw her. One evening, while tidying up her art supplies, I found a drawing. It showed a large black figure, sharp horns sprouting from its head, a jagged, frowning mouth. Beside it stood a little girl, shoulders hunched, clutching a pink teddy bear, tucked into the corner of the page. At the bottom, in tiny pencil letters, she had written, "This is when I feel the most scared." I stood under the kitchen light, staring at those trembling lines, and something inside me clenched. It felt like being struck in the chest with something blunt and heavy. This wasn't a one-off fear. This was her normal. The next morning, I gently asked, "Emily, did you draw this?" She nodded. "Don't worry, Mommy," she whispered. "I won't tell the teacher." "Why not?" I asked. She pressed her lips together, thinking hard, then said, "Because Daddy says we don't talk about family stuff with other people." And in that moment, I understood something sharp and painful. What I'd called patience, what I thought was protecting her, was just silence and retreat in her eyes. I kept waiting for Gordon to come around, for Emily to grow up, for the right time. But maybe I'd overestimated the worth of endurance. Maybe it was my silence that gave him the space to hurt us even more. That night, I sat on the couch, listening to Gordon's voice upstairs on a call, staring out at the still, silent dark beyond the window. And I realized I couldn't wait any longer. Because Emily didn't just need a mother who was dutiful. She needed a mother who was awake. That night, Gordon said he had to work late again. He said it so casually, without even looking at me. I was standing in the kitchen with a dish towel in my hand, watching him slip on his shoes, grab his keys, eyes glued to his phone. Don't wait for me for dinner, he said. I nodded. Didn't say a word. Not even 30 minutes after he left. Just as I was about to call Emily down to eat, my phone buzzed. A notification popped up. There was a withdrawal from our bank account. $327. The note read, Camellia Bay Seafood Grill. I froze. That was a pricey coastal restaurant. I remembered suggesting we go there to celebrate Emily's school placement a few months ago. He said it was too over the top. I opened the restaurant's Instagram page. A newly posted story popped UPA promotional video highlighting how packed the place was. And there it was. A hand I knew too well. A watch I'd bought him 2 birthdays ago. His hand. Resting on the table beside a glass of wine. Across from him was a woman. Young. Polished. Only half her face in the frame, but her pink manicured nails and beaming smile were in full view. I understood immediately. I didn't cry. Didn't throw anything. I just sat down at the kitchen table, listening to the broth bubbling on the stove while Emily's cartoons played faintly upstairs. I turned my phone face down, muttered under my breath, You really do know how to put on a show. It wasn't heartbreak, it was humiliation. Cold, deliberate, dismissive. He had already checked out of this marriage. He just hadn't bothered to mention it. And the worst part, he was still parading around as the doting husband. The next morning, I didn't make his usual breakfast. He came downstairs and frowned. No eggs today. I didn't answer. Just gave him a flat look. He poured himself a cup of coffee, took a sip, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. How was the seafood last night? His hand paused midair. A flicker of tension crossed his face. What? I didn't give him a chance to play dumb. My tone stayed calm. Camellia Bay Seafood Grill. Gorgeous view. That woman sitting across from you, she looked nice. He went silent for a beat, then gave me a condescending smile. So now you're tracking where I eat. Claire, that's not healthy. My grip tightened around the edge of the chair. My knuckles went pale. You don't think I deserve an explanation? He shrugged, utterly unapologetic. Explain what? There hasn't been anything between us for a long time, has there? I blinked, stunned by how shameless he was. You've made your entire life about Emily. Always hovering, always worrying, like a black hole of anxiety. You don't even know how to be a normal woman anymore. I stared at him, my voice hoarse. So your cheating is my fault now, because I'm not normal enough for you. I never said I cheated. Don't go putting words in my mouth. He even had the audacity to look innocent. I had dinner with someone who listens to me, appreciates me. If your fragile ego can't handle that, it's your problem. I was speechless. The way he spoke like this was all perfectly reasonable made me feel like I'd stepped into someone else's life. He set the mug down. His tone softened, as if we were simply discussing logistics. Claire, the truth is, I'm done. You're paranoid, controlling, emotionally unstable. And you're dragging Emily down with you. She used to be outgoing. Now she clings to you, trembling all the time. Don't you think you're the problem? I could hardly breathe. What are you trying to say? His voice was steady, clinical. We need to separate. For a while. You need time to work on yourself. And frankly, in your current state, I don't think you're fit to raise Emily on your own. My hands were shaking. I lowered my voice. You want custody? He caught the panic in my eyes and added casually. Not necessarily. We can do joint custody if you prefer. Keep it amicable. Split the assets fairly. No need to make this messy. That was when it hit me. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional. This was a setup. He didn't just wanted me ruined. Slowly, strategically, making me look like the unstable one while he played the part of the calm, responsible father. I watched him pick up his briefcase and walk out the door. And for the first time, I felt something deeper than heartbreak, real fear. That night, Emily climbed into my bed holding her stuffed bear and whispered, Is Daddy not coming back again? I stroked her hair, swallowing the knot in my throat. It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's right here. She nodded, then looked up at me and said, almost inaudibly, I recorded it. When he said on the phone, I'm almost done with her. Just wait. I blinked. You recorded what? She glanced at her bear, then gently squeezed it. A small click came from the back. The birthday gift I'd given her, the Barrett, had a voice recorder built in. She looked at me with those serious eyes and said, I just didn't want him to say things like that again. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. If Emily had already learned to secretly protect herself, then what right did I have to keep pretending silence was strength? He wanted a clean break, A calculated win. Then let's play. And we'll see who really walks away victorious. The letter came on a rainy morning. I was in the kitchen, packing Emily's lunchbox when the doorbell rang a delivery. I signed for it without thinking much, only noticing how unusually heavy the envelope felt in my hands. The moment I tore it open, I felt the blood drain from my face. Gordon had filed for divorce. The grounds: irreconcilable differences, emotional instability of the spouse, and a pattern of behavior detrimental to the child's development. And he was seeking full custody of Emily. I stared at the paper, my fingers going numb, one thought pulsing in my head. He actually did it. No conversation. No warning. No discussion. Just like that, he erased me from our family like I was an expired contract clean. Efficient. Heartless. The edges of the paper were slightly damp from the rain. I folded the letter back into its envelope and stood there, listening to Emily's voice upstairs as she sang in her room. I couldn't let her see me like this. That afternoon, Gordon arrived with his attorney. He walked in with the detached calm of a man negotiating a business deal. "Claire," he said, placing a stack of documents on the dining table, "this is the most peaceful way to do this. I'm not asking you to leave empty-handed, but you have to admit, I was the sole provider all these years. It's reasonable that I retain the majority of the assets. All I want is for Emily to have a stable environment." My voice caught as I stared at him. A stable environment, something you suddenly remembered after cheating on me. He looked up, eyes blank. "Claire, our problems didn't start with dinner. It's your emotional volatility over the years. You've smothered Emily so much she's become anxious and withdrawn. Don't you see that?" I clenched my jaw. "What do you really want? Kick us out and parade Emily around like a prop for your new narrative?" He gave a half smile. "Don't be so dramatic. I just don't want her further influenced by your instability. She needs a father who can take her out into the world, not a mother who hides from it. You're delusional, Gordon." My voice was shaking. "When have you ever cared about her? She had a 103-degree fever, and you refused to take her to the hospital. She drew a pitch-black picture, and you called her weird. And now you want to say I'm the one making her unwell." He spread his hands. "You don't have proof. The court doesn't deal in feelings, Claire. It deals in facts. You need to get used to that." That's when I knew he didn't just want out. He wanted to strip me of my identity as a mother. A few days later, Emily and I packed our bags and moved into Tina's house. When I called her, I barely got the words out. She paused for 3 seconds, then said, "Come now. I'll get the guest room ready." Tina was the only person who hadn't bought into Gordon's performance. That night, I sat in her living room after tucking Emily into bed. I told her everything in pieces between long pauses and broken sentences. She didn't interrupt, just placed her teacup down and said coldly, "He's getting ahead of you, Claire. He knows you have no income, no public backing. If you so much as flinch, he'll take everything." I looked at her, my voice barely audible. "But I'm not unstable. I've just been pushed to the edge." She nodded. "I know, but that doesn't matter. He's playing a strategy. You need to start documenting everything. Every conversation. Every incident. Start today." "I don't have anything," I whispered. "He already moved half the money out of our account. The house is in his name. Even Emily's medical records list him as the primary contact, his name, his phone number." Tina sighed. "Then you start from zero. Write down every detail. Record everything. Screenshot. Timestamp. Treat this like war, Claire. Because it is." I nodded silently. That night, as I lay beside Emily, she reached for my hand and asked, "Mommy, when can we go home?" Her face was small and soft in the glow of the nightlight. My heart ached like it had been struck with a hammer. I whispered, "Home is wherever you and I are together, sweetie." She nodded, then gently patted the little bear in her arms. The same one I gave her for her birthday. The one with the voice recorder inside. And just like that, her voice from before came flooding back to me. I didn't want him to say those things again, so I pressed the button. I'd never paid attention to that button before. But now, a pulse of clarity surged through me. Maybe, just maybe, that little bear held the key to everything. The key to turning this fight around. I never imagined I'd one day find myself sitting in a sterile white chair at a psychological evaluation center, waiting like a patient on trial, me sanity under review, trying to convince a 20-something therapist with a robotic smile that I wasn't emotionally unstable. Gordon's lawyer had requested the evaluation, citing custodial suitability. but I knew exactly what it was. He was laying the groundwork. He wanted a professional to say the words for him. This woman is unfit to be a mother. I filled out the standard intake forms, answered the scripted questions. Most of them came straight from a template. How do you typically handle stress? Any tendencies toward insomnia or irritability? Has your daughter ever shown fear or avoidance of you? I sat upright, carefully measuring every word, my tone, even my breathing, terrified that a single glance, a flicker of expression, might end up in the report. But then the therapist looked up and asked, casually, would you say Mr. Gordon has offered you care, support, or protection over the years? And I almost lost it. Him. I gave a short, brittle laugh. The only thing he's consistently done for me is stay silent. You call that support? She blinked, then lowered her pen. No follow-up. But I knew she was taking notes. I also knew this report would not be in my favor. A few business days later, the preliminary results arrived. Subject displays mild high anxiety traits, a tendency towards sleep disruption, and moderate low self-regulation when facing major life events. In other words, not calm enough, not stable enough, not fit to raise a child alone. I stared at the printout and let out a dry, humorless laugh. He didn't win with fact, she won with phrasing. He disguised my clarity as anxiety, buried his neglect under the label of emotional volatility. And the worst part, this report had already been submitted to the court. Even Emily's school began to treat me differently. Teachers stopped greeting me with warmth. One day, Emily's drawing was specially sent home with a note. We'd love to hear Mom's thoughts on this one. Their tone carried a subtle, careful concern. When I brought the picture back to Tina's that evening, she had just returned from work. I spread it out on the kitchen table. It was a drawing of a house with two figures, one in bright clothes. A sun beaming on their face, the other shrunk in a corner, cloaked in gray. Tina frowned. Kids got more emotional range than I did at her age. I gave a tired smile. She told me, Mommy is the sun. Daddy is the ice cube. Tina stared at me. Claire, you need to wake up. Stop thinking patience is a strategy. I nodded slowly, then asked, do you remember the lawyer you mentioned? Can you help me get in touch? The next day, I visited the firm Tina recommended. The woman who met me was Ms. Carter, sharp eyes behind fine-rimmed glasses, neatly dressed. No-nonsense demeanor. She listened as I spoke for nearly 30 minutes. She didn't nod much, didn't interrupt, just made the occasional note. When I finished, she closed her notebook and asked, what's your current income? I don't have any stable earnings. I've been raising Emily full-time. I only work part-time at a community art class once a week downtown. Her brow twitched. So you've been financially dependent on Mr. Gordon? I nodded. Up until now, yes. She leaned back slightly. Claire, I'm going to be blunt. Right now, your situation is precarious. He has the money, the stable job, and now a psychological report in his corner. My throat tightened. So, I'm going to lose. She paused, then said, I'm not saying you'll lose. I'm saying if you don't go on the offensive, you won't even have a chance to fight. Her voice wasn't soothing. It was a warning. I drew a breath. So what do I do? She looked me straight in the eye. Starting today, stop trying to be the wife who's holding a marriage together. You are now a mother defending her child. For a moment, tears welled up unexpectedly. I nodded. I'll do everything you tell me. I won't hesitate anymore. As I stepped out of the office, the wind caught my coat. I ducked into a stationery store on the corner and bought the thickest notebook I could find. On the very first page, I wrote the date. It was the first day of my war. I started going through our life like I was auditing a bankrupt company. Every detail, every receipt, every photo suddenly became a line item on a ledger I could no longer afford to overlook. I dug out my old laptop, scrolled through dusty photo archives, emptied drawers full of half-faded receipts. I wasn't reminiscing. I was hunting for evidence. Every hospital visit Gordon never showed up for, every birthday party he skipped, every family gathering he left after 10 minutes with a fake smile and a fake excuse. I cataloged everything: photos, text messages, appointment slips. Each file was labeled, numbered, annotated. At first, it was just to build my defense. But the more I documented, the more I saw a pattern I had ignored for years. When Emily was 5, she had a raging fever from a tonsil infection. I carried her to the ER by myself in the middle of the night. When she turned 6, Gordon was flying to Seattle for work. I baked the cake, hosted the party, posed in every photo as if nothing was missing. At 7, she had her first panic episode at school, burst into tears in the middle of class. They tried calling Gordon 3 times, she never picked up. They called me. Back then, I told myself, he's just busy. Now I know he never really cared. Tina put me in touch with Doris, an elementary school counselor she trusted. Doris was calm, warm, and experienced. She started meeting with Emily once a week for what she called creative emotional work. After their first session, Doris sat me down. Emily's a bright child, she said, but she's holding a lot in. She told me her favorite time is when she draws with mommy and we don't have to talk. That sentence made my nose sting. Doris paused, then added, she doesn't say much about her father. But there was one thing. She said that whenever she sees him in a black suit, she wants to turn off the lights. I whispered, is she afraid of him? Doris didn't answer directly. She didn't use the word afraid. What she said was, I don't like it when he's around. That night, back at Tina's, I asked Emily gently, did you have fun drawing today? She nodded. What do you like drawing the most? She thought for a moment. I drew a picture of our house. She brought it to me. The drawing showed a sunny sky, a few trees, and 2 people on a grassy hill. One wore an orange dress, curly hair, standing near a cat. The other wore a black suit. His face was blank, with a big X where the mouth should be. Is this me? I asked, pointing to the figure in orange. She smiled. You're the sun. And this one? I pointed to the faceless man. She didn't answer. She just pressed her hand against the pink bear in her lap, her silent way of reminding me. I ran my hand through her hair and didn't press further. I knew she had already said everything she needed to with crayons instead of words. On the day of our pretrial mediation, Gordon arrived in a navy suit and burgundy tie, carrying a small gift box. He took Emily to an ice cream shop. I found out later he'd hired a photographer and posted a polished shot online, father and daughter smiling over cones. Caption, no matter what happens, I'll always be her dad. When I saw the post, Emily was lying on my bed, drawing. I asked, how was time with Daddy today? She hesitated, then said softly, he was happy at first. Bought me ice cream, said we could go to the amusement park. And then, she bit her lip. Then he said, you have to be on Daddy's side. Don't keep talking to Mommy about everything. I paused. Did you record that? She nodded and handed me the pink bear. For the first time, I carefully opened the Velcro on its back and took out the recorder. We sat together on the bed as she pressed play. Gordon's voice came through, calm but tightly wound. You know, if you keep listening to Mommy, she'll keep losing it. You don't want her to be taken away, do you? Emily was silent. Just soft, shallow breaths. Then Gordon again. So help Daddy. Don't say too much. You understand me. I felt my fingers tighten into fists. This wasn't just manipulation. He was using our daughter as a pawn, pressuring her to play his version of happy family, coaching her to hide what she felt, weaponizing her loyalty. And now, he was turning that illusion into a campaign to win the court, the public, maybe even her. But he'd underestimated her. Emily wasn't his prop. She was quietly, steadfastly standing with me. I switched off the recorder and gently tucked the bear back into her arms. She looked up at me and whispered, will this help? I nodded slowly, my voice firm but soft. Yes, baby. It'll help protect you. And it'll protect Mommy, too. She leaned on my shoulder, crayon still in hand. Mommy, are there going to be a lot of grown-ups who don't like us now? I hesitated, running my fingers through her hair. Maybe. She didn't cry. She didn't ask again. She just slid her drawing a little closer to me and murmured, as long as I'm with you, I'm not scared. I didn't speak. I just held her, tightly. On the day of the hearing, I wore a deep navy dress, the one Tina had helped me pick out. She'd said, you don't need to look beautiful. You need to look like the steady, capable mother that you are. I sat across from the plaintiff's table, hands resting on my lap, trying to keep my fingers from trembling too visibly. Gordon entered wearing his best performance face, composed, concerned, and carefully restrained. He even gave me a slight, faux civil nod, as if we were just 2 people at a mediation table and not 2 opponents in a courtroom where he was trying to take our daughter away from me. His attorney stood and submitted the psychological evaluation with all the confidence of a man laying down a trump card. Based on the findings of a licensed professional, he began evenly. We believe Ms. Claire Wilson demonstrates sustained high-stress responses and emotional volatility, which may pose a risk to Emily's well-being. Mr. Gordon is fully prepared to provide a stable, nurturing environment. I felt my fingernails dig into my palm. Those words calm, clinical, and precise landed like nails, pinning me down with the label of a dangerous mother. Then they brought in 2 witnesses, a longtime friend of Gordon's and an old neighbor. Their statements were veiled, but calculated. I've heard Claire speak rather loudly to Emily at times. She always seemed tense. Didn't let Emily socialize much with other kids. I turned slightly toward the judge, wanting to speak, to shout that's not true, but I knew it wasn't my turn. Not yet. Ms. Carter placed a steady hand on mine and whispered, "They're reciting fiction. We're here to speak truth." When Gordon took the stand, he performed like the poster dad for parental devotion. "I've always respected Claire's role in our home," he said, "but these past couple of years, I've been truly concerned. One night, I came downstairs and found her crying. I asked what was wrong at Leanne. She screamed at me that I'd ruined her life." His voice caught. He looked heartbreakingly sincere. Even I, for a second, felt disoriented by the familiarity of his tone. But it was a lie. He never asked me what was wrong. He avoided me like I was background noise he couldn't switch off. Then it was my turn to testify. Ms. Carter gave me a brief nod. "Ms. Wilson," Gordon's lawyer began smoothly, "would you agree that you've had emotional outbursts in front of your daughter due to the stress of parenting?" I met his eyes. "Yes, I've cried. I've broken down. But I have never hurt my daughter. Never. I've done everything I could to shield her from what I was feeling." He nodded, as though expecting that answer, and pulled out a printed screenshot. "You posted on Instagram, quote, 'Sometimes being alive is too hard.' Is that correct?" I gave a soft, dry laugh. "Yes, I did. That day I had to rush Emily to the ER by myself. I called Gordon 3 times. He never picked up. That post wasn't about giving up. It was about not wanting my daughter to carry the weight I was shouldering alone." The courtroom fell silent, but I could feel its subtle damage already done. The accumulation of words, screenshots, and testimonies slowly building a narrative. Before lunch, the judge announced a half-hour recess. When court resumed, he said he would consider whether to hear from Emily directly. My first instinct was to shake my head. "She's only 8, I said quietly. "She shouldn't have to sit on that witness stand." Ms. Carter, calm as ever, replied, "Claire, if every word we say is being spun into hysteria, then we need a voice that can't be spun." I didn't answer right away. The thought of putting Emily in the middle made my chest twist with shame. But deep down, I knew Emily wasn't hiding in the corner anymore. She knew. She had always known. I stepped into the waiting room and found her sitting on the couch, coloring. She was drawing a courtroom. A woman in a dress stood on one side, a tiny sun on her face. Across from her stood a man, painted in dull gray. I knelt beside her and asked gently, "Emily, if someone asks you this afternoon if you want to say anything, do you think you could be brave and tell them what happened?" She looked up at me, not a flicker of fear. "I will." I hesitated. "Will you be nervous?" She thought for a second, then said, "I just don't want people to keep saying bad things about you." Her voice was small but clear, and in that moment, I knew she was ready, and I had to be ready to hear her say out loud the truths I once hoped she hadn't noticed. At exactly 2 o'clock, the court came back into session. I sat frozen in my seat, palms damp, heart pounding like a drumbeat inside my chest. Ms. Carter was calmly flipping through documents beside me, while Tina, seated in the first row of the gallery, met my eyes and gave me a look that said, "She's got this." Emily wore her favorite dress, the one with tiny silver stars sprinkled across a navy background. She sat next to Doris, holding her pink bear. Her face was far more composed than I had dared hope. There was a stillness about her, not born of fear, but of quiet resolve. The judge spoke, his voice measured. After discussion with counsel on both sides, the court will now allow a brief statement from the minor, Emily Wilson, with her counselor present. The statement will be formally entered into record. The room stilled instantly. I gripped the edge of my seat. Doris took Emily's hand and guided her to the witness stand. She was so small her feet barely touched the floor. The bear sat neatly in her lap, and the microphone was angled carefully toward her. She looked up at the judge with a serious expression, nodding slowly as he said, "Emily, we're asking you to speak today because we want to understand how you feel. Take your time. You can say anything you want." Emily inhaled, her voice soft but steady. I like being with Mommy, she began. Because she always listens to me. And she draws with me. The judge gave a warm smile. And how do you feel when you're with your dad? Emily glanced down at the bear in her lap and was quiet for a moment. Daddy's not home a lot, she whispered. And I'm not really scared of the dark. I'm scared when he comes home. The room seemed to hold its breath. The judge's voice was gentle. Why is that, sweetheart? Emily clutched her bear's paw tighter. He doesn't like it when I talk. If I tell Mommy stuff, he says I'm too noisy. Sometimes he kicks the door. And he yells at Mommy. He says she's crazy. Across the aisle, I saw something break across Gordon's face for the first time, like a crack running across the surface of cold stone. He tried to rise, but his lawyer pulled him down with a firm grip. His mouth opened, but the judge cut him off sharply. Mr. Wilson, remain silent. Emily continued, undeterred. He told me once, if I talked too much, he'd make Mommy go away. He said, she swallowed hard. He said, you better be on Daddy's side, or you'll hurt her. Her voice trembled for a second. But she didn't falter. I don't want Mommy to go away. I don't want to live in a house that's cold. Then she looked at me. That look, it wasn't pleading. It wasn't childish. It was the gaze of a soul that had carried too much silence, finally letting it go. The judge gave a subtle nod to the counselor. Doris reached for Emily's hand, ready to lead her off the stand. But Emily wasn't done. Can I play you something? A quiet ripple passed through the courtroom. It's a recording, she said. I did it myself. Mommy didn't tell me to. I just wanted someone to hear. Ms. Carter stood immediately. Your Honor, we've only just been made aware of this. We intend to submit the full, unaltered audio file and its source at the next court session for formal review. The judge nodded, firm but intrigued. The court will accept it for evidentiary review. That's all for today. And that's when Gordon snapped. He shot to his feet. She's a child. She doesn't understand. She doesn't know what she's saying. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Wilson, sit down and remain silent. Emily returned to her seat, passing close to me as Doris guided her by. She paused just long enough to whisper up at me. Did I do okay? I wrapped my arm around her, holding back the lump in my throat. You did amazing, sweetheart. You were so brave. The judge called for recess, stating that further hearings would be scheduled to assess the submitted evidence. Legal battles take time, but I knew in that moment, something irreversible had shifted. Gordon's mask of the perfect father, the curated smile, the weekend photo ops, the performative affection had shattered. Not because of a lawyer, not because of me, but because our daughter stood up and told the truth. On the morning of the supplemental hearing, I arrived early and sat alone on the wooden bench outside the courtroom, clutching the pink bear in both hands. Emily had given it to me that morning, without fanfare, just one simple sentence. You can let them hear what he said. Then she went back to her room, closed the door, and returned to her drawings like she was quietly fighting a different kind of battle in her own way. When Ms. Carter stepped out of the conference room and saw me, I was already composed. Today, she said, her voice firm but calm, we're not going to win with emotion. We're going to dismantle the image he built using his own words. I nodded. She laid out the binder across the table, each page labeled and sectioned. The ER visit log from the night Emily had a high fever, screenshots of the birthday party messages where he never showed. Footage from the home security system the night he slammed the door, hurled a glass, and shouted at Emily to shut up. Every detail I had spent months gathering was now evidence. Are you ready? She asked. I took a deep breath. More than I've ever been. When the courtroom reopened, Gordon looked as polished as ever. He wore his slate blue suit, a deep-toned tie, and that same carefully composed expression, smooth, contained, unreadable. A man who knew how to perform on cue. But today wasn't about appearances. Ms. Carter stood first. Your Honor, we will be submitting 3 categories of new evidence to directly refute the plaintiff's claims regarding an unstable home environment and the defendant's alleged inadequacy as a primary caregiver. The judge nodded. Proceed. First exhibit, home surveillance footage. The screen lit up. The timestamp in the corner showed it was a Friday night about 9 months ago. Emily sat on the living room rug, doing a puzzle. Gordon entered holding a folder. His voice came through. Where's dinner? A few seconds passed. Then, frustrated, he slapped the couch after not finding the remote, turned toward the kitchen and shouted, Claire, do you even have a brain? Emily jolted. standing up and backing into the corner of the couch. Then the sound of a glass shattering. The room went so quiet. It felt like the air had stopped moving. Even Gordon's attorney paused before standing. Objection: has this video been edited? Ms. Carter was ready. The unaltered footage has been submitted to court technicians for verification. This version is a direct duplicate. The judge nodded. Proceed. Second exhibit. Personal records and diary entries. Ms. Carter read selected lines while holding up the corresponding financial logs. Emily's fever wouldn't break. I called Gordon 3 times. He said he was in meetings. She finally cooled down at 4 a.m. I held her on the bathroom floor all night. I never taped her all black drawing on the fridge. I was afraid he'd see it and say, "What kind of freak are you raising?" Single quote. I don't regret becoming a mother. I only regret trusting my life to a man who learned to act instead of love. The words were plain, quiet, but they clung to the courtroom walls like the smell of smoke after a fire. Third exhibit. Live testimony. Lisa took the stand in a pale trench coat, her hands visibly shaking. She spoke so softly at first the clerk had to ask her to repeat herself. Ms. Carter handed her a printed message. "Ms. Hill, can you confirm this message? She won't last long. Push her hard enough. She'll break. She'll give up custody, and the money was sent to you by Mr. Gordon Wilson." Lisa bit her lip, glanced at Gordon, then nodded. "He said it, but I didn't think he meant it. You didn't disagree, or warn anyone, correct? You continued to be involved in Emily's life during this time." Lisa dropped her gaze. "Yes. Were you aware Gordon was coaching Emily to respond favorably to him during the custody evaluation?" Lisa hesitated again, then gave a reluctant nod. "I didn't look at her when she stepped down. I didn't feel rage. Just a cold, clean clarity. People like Gordon, like the ones around him, they never saw anyone but themselves. Their only fear was getting caught in the wreckage." Then came the final piece. Ms. Carter formally requested to play the audio recording recovered from Emily's bear. The court technician connected the playback device to the speaker system. I held my breath. Gordon's voice came through soft, even kind, calculated. "You know, if you keep listening to Mommy, she'll keep going crazy. You don't want her to be taken away, do you?" A pause. Just Emily's light breathing. A soft sniff. Then he continued, "So you need to help Daddy. Don't talk too much. Okay, you understand me." The room was dead silent when the recording ended. I turned slowly and looked at Gordon. His face had gone pale, lips tightened to a thin line. The composure the performance was cracking. The judge adjusted his glasses and spoke. "This recording carries legal weight, combined with new witness testimony and behavioral documentation. The court will re-evaluate the validity of the plaintiff's claims." I felt my grip on the seat loosen. We didn't just win Emily's heart. We had turned the tide of the entire courtroom. When it was over, Emily walked up to me and gently placed the bear back in my hands. It was just a toy again now. Its job was done. It had protected us. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Mommy, I just wanted Daddy to really hug me. Not only when people are taking pictures." I wrapped my arms around her, unable to speak. She said it quietly, but I knew every single person in that courtroom heard her. The day the hearing ended, Emily and I walked out of the courthouse beneath a sky heavy with clouds, the kind that looked like they couldn't decide whether to break into rain or hold it all in. We didn't go back to Tina's. Instead, we ducked into the little bakery on the corner. Emily said she wanted cream pie, the same one she used to get as a reward after childhood vaccinations. I bought 2. When she took her first bite, the whipped cream stuck to the tip of her nose. I reached out to wipe it off, and for the first time in months, my mind was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes after disaster, but the kind that comes when you no longer have to brace for the next blow. We sat by the window. Across the street, a reporter was interviewing a social worker. Mic raised, eyes scanning like they were hunting for a more sensational quote. But I didn't look away. I didn't hide. I wasn't afraid of being seen anymore. 2 weeks later, the final ruling arrived. Sole custody was granted to me. Gordon was given limited visitation once a month, supervised by a third-party agency. The house was legally reassigned. I received the primary residence for Emily's daily life, plus a portion of financial compensation. I was awarded full authority over Emily's medical and educational decisions. As Ms. Carter read the decision aloud in her office, I felt like I'd reached the last mile of a marathon. My legs no longer felt like they belonged to me, but somehow, I had made it across the finish line. "Claire," she said, closing the folder. "You won." I smiled faintly. "I didn't win. He just lost everything all on his own." She nodded. "Still, most people wouldn't have lasted long enough for him to drop the mask." She was right. If I hadn't had Emily, if Emily hadn't found the courage to speak, if I had broken at any point along the way, none of this would have happened. At the final visitation arrangement meeting, Gordon showed up in a pressed suit, but he looked worn out, older, his eyes sunken. Lisa didn't come. Word was she had cut ties with him right after testifying and quietly disappeared. Gordon walked in and scanned the room like he was looking for a familiar face. But no one acknowledged him. He sat across from me at the conference table, and for the first time, his gaze dropped instead of meeting mine. Emily refused to speak to him. She simply sat beside me, her hand tightly wrapped around my finger. He tried. "Emily," he began softly. "I know this doesn't make sense now." She turned her face away. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to rescue him from the silence he created. When the meeting ended, he stood up, hesitated, and then looked at me like he was summoning the last of his dignity. "Claire," he said, "I'm not a completely bad father. I just made some mistakes." I met his eyes. "Steady. You did. And you're allowed to apologize. You're allowed to try to make amends. But whether or not Emily forgives you, that's for her to decide." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. That was the moment he understood. He had nothing left to win. A few days later, someone anonymously leaked the courtroom audio clip to the media. The internet caught fire. "That's the model dad from that real estate firm. He said that to his kid. Anne wanted custody." Classic fakery syndrome. Gordon's company released a public statement. Effective immediately, Mr. Wilson has been placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation. The polished image he once flaunted. Gone overnight. Tina called me after the story broke. "Now you have proof. And his masket's not cracked anymore. It's dust." I didn't say much. Just nodded. After we hung up, I stood by the window, watching the rain begin soft and steady against the glass. A late baptism, maybe. Emily came into my room holding a small handmade picture book. "Mom," she said, "this is our story." I opened it. On the first page, there was a woman in a yellow dress and a little girl holding a pink bear. Behind them was a sky full of twinkling stars. She had titled it The Sunshine House. I smiled. "Why that name?" "Because," she said, "the sunshine only shows up where we're together." I ran my hand gently through her hair and realized this fight hadn't just left behind scars. It had given us a place of our own, a clean patch of earth to start again. No matter how hard the days ahead might be, we would grow something beautiful from here. That fall, I walked back into a classroom for the first time in years, standing in front of a dozen wide-eyed 7- and 8-year-olds, a paintbrush in my hand. The classroom was just a rec room at the city's community arts center. Faded curtains, scuffed tables, but when the afternoon sun spilled through the windows, it warmed everything it touched, like it knew we were rebuilding something. I'd been offered a full-time position, stable, but with flexible hours, so I could still be there for Emily. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. "Today," I said with a smile, "we're going to draw my home." The room filled with the rustle of paper and squeals of excitement as the kids spread out their supplies. I picked up my own sheet and began to draw. I sketched Emily on the couch, cradling her pink bear, and me sitting beside her, one hand in hers, the other holding a brush. A few months ago, I couldn't have imagined we'd ever live like this again, quiet, simple, unguarded. Gordon's court-ordered visitations only lasted 2 sessions before Emily refused to go again. Following the counselor's recommendation, she was allowed to opt out. Gordon tried emailing me afterward, requesting more opportunities to connect. I didn't reply. I passed it to my attorney. He didn't push further. Word was, his company had terminated him permanently. The polished image of the perfect husband, devoted father, dismantled it all himself, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but silence. And me, I started laying the foundation of a new home this time, one that belonged to me. With Tina's help, I applied for and received a small local grant from a nonprofit arts initiative. I launched a therapeutic art course called Sunshine House, named after the picture book Emily had drawn for us. We converted our living room into a workshop. Each week, 3 to 5 women joined, some survivors of abusive relationships, others navigating the rough waters of single parenthood. We painted. We talked. We did breathing exercises. Sometimes, we just sipped tea and let the silence speak for us. No one was ever required to share their story, but we all understood exactly what brought each of us there. Emily began to settle into herself, too. She made new friends at school, joined a writing club, and started filling the fridge with hand-drawn cartoons, bright colors, taped over the shadows that used to live in those corners. One afternoon, while I was tidying up my workspace, she wandered over and asked, "Mom, are you still scared of Dad?" I looked at her, caught off guard. She continued, "You used to be really careful how you talked, how you walked. But now, you're different." I gave her a smile. "I wasn't scared of your dad, sweetheart. I was scared of losing you." She leaned in and wrapped her arms around me. "You're not gonna lose me. Ever." And just like that, something inside Maya not I hadn't even known I was still holding unraveled. That night, we curled up on the couch watching an old movie. Her head rested on my chest, and I traced the shape of her cheek with my fingers, studying her little face, still soft, still childlike, but with a strength that hadn't been there before. And it hit me. I hadn't just won a custody battle. I hadn't just escaped a man. I had reclaimed my daughter, my voice, my days. This time, I would lead us forward, not toward the life we lost, but toward the one we were finally free to create.